What if I told you that the rosary hanging on your wall right now, the one you walk past every day without thinking, might be the very reason your home feels spiritually heavy, especially as December 3rd approaches? This isn't superstition, fear-mongering, or emotional manipulation. This teaching comes directly from the spiritual observations of Saint Padre Pio, who saw what most of us cannot. Just a few days ago, a woman reached out to me, describing how her family had been falling apart. Constant arguments, financial instability, unexplainable health problems that even doctors couldn't diagnose. Something inside her felt wrong. After watching one of our videos, she examined the antique rosary hanging in her bedroom, a black rosary she had bought at an estate sale. She removed it, and within days the atmosphere in her home completely changed. Peace returned. Tension vanished. Conversations became gentle again. Padre Pio, the stigmatic saint blessed with extraordinary spiritual gifts, left behind a warning that very few Catholics truly understand. He taught that certain rosaries, especially specific colors, can become spiritual conduits, not of grace, but of negative influence. And the most alarming part? These rosaries are often the ones that look the most beautiful, the most unique, the most special when we find them in online shops or antique markets. And now, as December 3rd draws near, a day many saints recognized as spiritually sensitive in the Advent season, it becomes even more essential for you to know this truth. The spiritual atmosphere around early Advent is intense. It is a time of breakthroughs for some and spiritual attacks for others. Padre Pio understood that objects connected to prayer, especially the rosary, become more spiritually active on days of heightened grace. And that means they also become more vulnerable to distortion. Today, I'm going to reveal the exact colors Padre Pio warned about, why these seemingly harmless rosaries could be affecting your home, and the 6 signs that your rosary might be spiritually compromised, especially during the December 3rd threshold of Advent grace. And listen carefully, the third type I'll mention is the one most commonly found in Catholic homes today, and also the one Padre Pio considered the most spiritually dangerous. Are you ready to discover what may be hiding in plain sight on your prayer table? Because after hearing Padre Pio's teaching, you will never look at a rosary the same way again. If you trust in the spiritual wisdom of Padre Pio, write in the comments, "Discern my path, Padre Pio." Your comment may help someone who is unknowingly bringing spiritual interference into their own home. Before we explore the colors, let's understand why the rosary holds such power, and why that power attracts spiritual distortion, especially approaching December 3rd, a day often marked by inner turmoil, sudden emotional shifts, and moments of spiritual testing. The rosary is not simply a string of beads. It is a weapon, a spiritual chain that binds darkness and opens a pathway to the Blessed Virgin Mary, who leads us to Christ. Since its revelation to Saint Dominic in the 13th century, the rosary has been connected to miraculous healings, conversions, protections, and victories over evil. But that spiritual power is precisely what makes the rosary a target. Throughout history, sacred objects have been misused, repurposed, or even spiritually corrupted. Padre Pio warned that the devil is like a rabid dog tied to a chain. He cannot reach you unless you step within his circle. But what happens when something in your own home, something you believe is holy, has already been within that circle? Padre Pio had extraordinary discernment. He could read souls, he could bilocate, and critically, he could sense when an object, especially a rosary, carried a spiritual influence. Many pilgrims brought items to him for blessings, but Padre Pio sometimes refused, even asking certain objects to be destroyed immediately. One story tells of a woman from Naples who presented what looked like a normal rosary. Before she could even speak, Padre Pio recoiled and said, "Take that thing away. It was not created for prayer." That rosary, later discovered, had been used in occult rituals and then disguised as a Catholic sacramental. This is where his December warnings become crucial. Padre Pio taught that not everything that appears holy is truly sacred. In modern times, thousands of rosaries are mass-produced with materials, colors, and designs that do not reflect faith, but fashion. Some even pass through hands or practices incompatible with Christianity. This is why, as December 3rd approaches, it is essential to examine the rosaries in your home. Advent opens spiritual doors, some heavenly, some hostile. And Padre Pio emphasized that unblessed or spiritually tainted rosaries can hinder your prayer, block blessings, or disrupt peace. So now, let's examine the 3 rosary colors Padre Pio specifically warned about, and why December 3rd makes their presence even more concerning. 1. The completely black rosary. While black can represent mourning and penitence in Catholic tradition, Padre Pio observed that black rosaries found outside trusted religious sources were often previously used in non-Christian rituals. The color absorbs and conceals spiritual energy, he explained, both good and bad. One woman suffered months of nightmares and spiritual oppression. When she met Padre Pio, he immediately asked about the dark object near her bed. It was a black rosary bought from an antique shop. He told her to dispose of it. Within days, her torment ended. Padre Pio taught that black objects used in negative rituals can hold spiritual residue long after the ritual has ended. And during spiritually charged days, like December 3rd, these residues become more active, causing emotional heaviness, conflict, and loss of peace. 2. The blood red rosary. Red is sacred in Catholic symbolism. It represents the blood of Christ and martyrdom. But Padre Pio warned that certain intensely red rosaries, especially ones made from unknown origins, had been used in blood-pact rituals or spiritual invocations outside the Christian faith. He distinguished holy red rosaries from corrupted ones by the intention behind their creation. Some were crafted specifically for non-Christian ceremonies. Even after blessing, Padre Pio warned, some objects retain spiritual interference. One family received an antique red rosary as a gift. Almost immediately, anger and division entered their home. The father, once calm, became easily enraged. Padre Pio later revealed the rosary's past was spiritually distorted. As December 3rd nears, a day spiritually sensitive to emotional imbalance, these types of red rosaries can intensify negative energies already present in a home. Their teenage son developed severe insomnia, while the youngest child became increasingly fearful of entering certain rooms of the house. As December 3rd approached, a day Padre Pio emphasized for heightened spiritual sensitivity, they consulted him about the unusual disturbances. Immediately, Padre Pio inquired about a red rosary hanging in their prayer area. The mother was shocked. They had indeed hung an ornate red rosary as a decorative element on their home altar. Padre Pio explained that this particular rosary had previously been used in rituals, blending Catholic prayers with invocations to other entities, creating spiritual confusion that was subtly affecting their home environment. After removing it and having their home blessed, peace returned. Arguments ceased, emotional tensions dissolved, and a serene atmosphere was restored. The third category, perhaps the most concerning in today's context, involves multicolored rosaries made from unconventional materials, often resembling amulets or talismans from non-Christian traditions. These include beads that resemble eyes, crucifixes embedded with unusual symbols or elements, borrowed from multiple spiritual systems. Padre Pio described these hybrid rosaries as objects of spiritual confusion, blending authentic Catholic devotion with incompatible spiritual influences. In our era of eclectic spiritual practices and mass-produced religious items, these rosaries are increasingly common, often marketed as universal prayer beads or as part of inclusive spiritual practices. What makes this third category particularly dangerous is that it often appears benign, even ecumenical, to the untrained eye. Padre Pio warned that these rosaries interfere with the clarity of Christian prayer, creating spiritual static that disrupts the channel of communication with God. True Christian prayer follows a precise spiritual path, and mixing elements from fundamentally different spiritual systems can subtly distort its power. Modern marketplaces, both online and offline, have made these hybrid rosaries widely accessible, sometimes incorporating crystals claiming energetic properties, symbols from various religions, or elements like evil eyes meant to ward off negative influences. While they may appear spiritually harmless, Padre Pio cautioned that these objects represent spiritual compromise, weakening authentic connection with God and potentially undermining the effectiveness of devotion, especially on spiritually sensitive days like December 3rd. Another troubling trend Padre Pio might recognize today is the commercialization of rosaries as fashion or decor. When sacred objects are treated primarily as aesthetic accessories, they risk losing their spiritual integrity. While not always spiritually dangerous in the same way as previously misused rosaries, they create a subtle confusion about the sacredness of prayer and the purpose of sacramentals. Padre Pio offered guidance on how to discern potentially problematic rosaries. First, consider the origin. Rosaries from unknown sources, second-hand shops, flea markets, or unclear spiritual affiliations should be approached with caution. Second, observe your inner response. Authentic sacramentals bring peace and focus. Feelings of anxiety, distraction, or spiritual dryness may signal interference. Third, inspect symbols or modifications, non-traditional symbols, arbitrary markings, or designs incorporating other religious elements are red flags. Fourth, consider the materials, crystals, bones, unusual metals, or substances associated with occult practices require caution. Fifth, trust your intuition. God often speaks through subtle feelings. Discomfort around a rosary may indicate hidden spiritual issues. Sixth, notice effects on prayer. If a rosary consistently distracts you, diminishes meditation, or makes you avoid prayer, it may be incompatible with its intended spiritual purpose. Padre Pio's warnings were never meant to create fear. Rather, they reflect a deep understanding that spiritual realities, though invisible, impact our lives and prayers. His guidance encourages Catholics to approach sacramentals with informed reverence, not casual indifference. He emphasized that no object holds power greater than God's grace. Even rosaries with troubling histories can be reconsecrated. Though sometimes he advised replacement as prudent spiritual caution, the effects of spiritually compromised rosaries on the home are often subtle but cumulative. Padre Pio observed patterns of domestic and spiritual disturbance connected to these objects. The first sign often appears in prayer. Despite sincere devotion, Catholics may feel a mysterious resistance. One man from Sicily described it as swimming upstream whenever he tried to establish a prayer routine. Padre Pio identified an antique black and red rosary prominently displayed in his home as the source of spiritual static. Once removed, prayer life flowed naturally again. Beyond prayer, these rosaries can affect home atmosphere. Unexplained tension, recurring trivial arguments, and persistent heaviness may indicate spiritual interference. Sleep disturbances are another frequent symptom. Nightmares, insomnia, or waking drained, especially affecting multiple family members, can be linked to spiritually compromised objects. Padre Pio explained that during sleep, our defenses weaken, making subtle spiritual influences more effective. Children and pets, naturally sensitive to spiritual energies, often react first with fear, anxiety, or avoidance of certain rooms. What is particularly striking about Padre Pio's teaching is the gradual accumulation of spiritual disruption. The effects rarely announce themselves dramatically. Instead, they build slowly, eroding peace and harmony until the home feels fundamentally altered. One devoted parishioner, Martha, shared a powerful testimony. For nearly 2 years, her previously harmonious household experienced escalating conflict, emotional distance, and financial challenges. Family members struggled with chronic exhaustion and irritability, unaware of the subtle influence of a misplaced or misused rosary. It was only when Padre Pio guided her to examine the specific colored rosaries in her home, on the spiritually significant date of December 3rd, that the source of the disturbance became clear, and restoration was possible. December 3rd is a spiritually sensitive day during the Advent season when the veil between ordinary and spiritual realities is thinner. Padre Pio often emphasized that spiritual vigilance is crucial on such dates. The presence of compromised sacramentals, unnoticed in daily life, can exert disproportionate influence during these times, affecting prayer, peace, and the flow of God's grace into the home. Removing or properly blessing these rosaries restores alignment with divine protection and opens the home to blessings, particularly as Christmas approaches, a season of spiritual renewal, mercy, and miraculous intervention. Padre Pio's teachings remind us that every object in our prayer space matters. Rosaries are more than decorative items or collectibles. They are vessels of grace. Using them without discernment, particularly on spiritually charged days like December 3rd, can unintentionally allow interference into your home and prayer life. Observing his guidance, evaluating color, origin, materials, symbols, and the spiritual response they evoke, ensures that your devotion remains pure, your prayers effective, and your household blessed. By paying attention to these warnings, you safeguard your spiritual environment and prepare your home to receive the full blessings of Advent and Christmas. Spiritual vigilance and careful discernment allow the Rosary to function as it was intended. A channel of grace, a protector against negative influence, and a powerful link between your soul, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Christ himself. Padre Pio's insight into the dangers posed by black, red, and hybrid rosaries offers practical guidance for every Catholic seeking to strengthen faith, protect their family, and prepare spiritually for Christmas. What began as occasional disagreements in Martha's household gradually evolved into a persistent pattern of tension, threatening the unity of her family. Seeking guidance, she wrote to Padre Pio, who asked a question that surprised her. Had she recently acquired any new religious items? Martha remembered a collection of rosaries she had purchased at an estate sale, beautiful pieces in unusual colors that she had placed throughout her home as reminders to pray. Padre Pio instructed her to remove them and replace them with properly blessed rosaries from reputable religious sources, emphasizing that December 3rd, a spiritually sensitive day in the Advent season, was a critical moment for purification and alignment in the home. The transformation was remarkable. Within weeks, the household atmosphere lightened, relationships began to heal, even financial strains gradually eased. Padre Pio explained that spiritually compromised objects do not create problems from nothing. Instead, they amplify existing weaknesses and vulnerabilities, acting like a magnifying glass concentrating sunlight, intensifying ordinary human failings into persistent patterns of discord. This subtle amplification is why their effects are often difficult to detect. The resulting problems appear as normal family challenges rather than external spiritual interference. Understanding these signs is the first step toward discernment. But what should one do if a rosary in their possession might be carrying negative spiritual influence, especially during December 3rd when spiritual sensitivity is heightened? Padre Pio provided clear guidance, balancing faith with practical action. The first step he recommended is a thorough inventory of religious items in your home. This is not paranoia, it is mindful awareness of the objects we often take for granted. Examine each rosary, noting its origin, materials, and any unusual features deviating from traditional designs. Ask yourself, where did this come from? Who made it? What was their intention? For rosaries of the three concerning types, black, blood red, or multicolored with non-traditional elements, Padre Pio recommended specific approaches. Simply discarding them is insufficient. Their spiritual nature must be addressed. For rosaries of unclear origin, but with no overtly troubling features, a priest's blessing suffices. Most parish priests can perform blessings after Mass or during scheduled office hours, reconsecrating the object for proper sacred use and nullifying any previous misuse or negative association. However, for rosaries that trigger genuine spiritual discomfort or possess clearly problematic elements, Padre Pio advised a more cautious approach. Such items should be brought to a priest experienced in spiritual discernment who can determine whether blessing or, in some cases, proper disposal is necessary. Disposal should always be done reverently, typically by burning or burying the item after prayers, acknowledging that even compromised religious objects deserve respect. Prevention is equally crucial. When acquiring new rosaries, Padre Pio emphasized three principles: proper source, proper blessing, and proper intention. Purchase only from reputable suppliers, church gift shops, established Catholic bookstores, or religious communities. Have them blessed before use, and approach them with reverence rather than as decorative objects. He particularly recommended traditional rosaries made from simple materials such as wood, glass, or basic metals, crafted within prayerful communities. These items carry the added blessing of being created in an environment of devotion, enhancing their spiritual integrity for households that have experienced negative spiritual influences Padre Pio suggested a comprehensive approach to restoring spiritual health. This included having the home blessed by a priest, establishing a dedicated prayer space with properly blessed sacramentals, and maintaining regular family prayer, particularly the Rosary used as intended. One practical recommendation he often gave was creating a spiritual shield for the home, placing blessed items, crucifix, holy water, and a traditional rosary near entryways and bedrooms. When used with devotion, these items generate a protective spiritual atmosphere, especially during spiritually sensitive days like December 3rd. Padre Pio emphasized a crucial principle: the power lies not in the objects themselves, but in the faith, intention, and divine blessing they carry. A simple wooden rosary, properly blessed and prayed with devotion, surpasses the spiritual value of an ornate or expensive rosary treated merely as a talisman or accessory. The key is devotion, discernment, and adherence to sacred purpose. As we reflect on these little-known teachings from Padre Pio, we see that true spiritual protection comes not from objects alone, but from faithful devotion to God. The Rosary, when used properly, is a powerful tool of prayer. Its strength flows from the heart, not from the beads themselves. Discernment in our spiritual lives extends to everything we bring into our homes. The black rosaries, blood-red beads, and unconventional multicolored prayer beads are significant not because of inherent evil, but because of their prior use, spiritual history, or the intention with which they were created. Our spiritual journey demands both faith and vigilance. Padre Pio often said, "Pray, hope, and don't worry, but also act prudently." Examining rosaries in your home, ensuring they come from trustworthy sources, and having them properly blessed are simple yet profound acts of spiritual vigilance. They honor his teachings and protect your home from subtle interference, particularly on days like December 3rd, when spiritual sensitivity is heightened. Remember, the ultimate purpose of any sacramental, including the Rosary, is to draw us closer to Christ through prayer and devotion. Maintaining this perspective allows the Rosary to fulfill its true role, a lifeline connecting us to heaven, a source of grace, and a conduit of protection. If these warnings resonate with your spirit, write "spiritual protection" in the comments. Your engagement helps others discover this vital message, and may guide them in addressing unexplained spiritual challenges in their homes. If you found value in Padre Pio's teachings, please support our channel mission. Like, share, and subscribe. Every action helps us reach souls seeking guidance during these challenging times. Together, we form a spiritual community, spreading Padre Pio's wisdom and protecting homes, families, and hearts. May Padre Pio's blessing be upon you, bringing discernment, protection, and peace to your spiritual journey. Remember his words, the Rosary is a weapon for these times. But like any weapon, it must be used wisely, reverently, and with proper understanding. Thank you for joining this spiritual journey of discovery. Keep faith in your heart, and let wisdom guide your spiritual practices, particularly as December 3rd approaches, a day to safeguard your home, strengthen your devotion, and prepare for the blessings of Christmas.